Because Kurt told me to buy it because we have this Fetch app and you take pictures of your receipts and your earned points, and that earned 1,500 points if you bought it.
Rock and roll. Mine says 6:29. Oh, it just turned 6:30. I'd like to call the USD 49 School Board meeting to order for Monday, October 24th, 2022. First, I would like to make a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
So moved.
I've got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, vote yes.
Yes. Yes.
All opposed, vote no. Unanimous, 7-0. I want to take just a little bit of time to talk about the mission of USD 49 is to provide a quality learning experience for every student in every classroom every day. To support the mission of the district, the USD 49 Board of Education includes supporting a vision that encompasses high student achievement, highly effective staff, effective and positive communications, and effective management of resources. Also vital to keeping the focus on the district's mission and vision are that of the USD 49's board supports the district core values, being a champion for all kids, bring your best every day, carrying the banner for your school and district, and selling and creating possibilities and opportunities for students for their future. 2.0 consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
Mr. President?
Yes.
I have a few items I'd like to remove from the consent agenda, please.
Oh, I'll request that you do it one. When you said a few, I'll request that you do it one at a time.
I'll do that. 2.4, surplus property.
2.4, Jess, surplus property to move out of the consent agenda.
2.5, site council minutes.
2.5, site council minutes.
And 2.7, personnel transactions.
And 2.7, personnel transactions.
Thank you.
Okay, I move that we approve the consent agenda with those three items
I second it.
taken out. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
No, we don't have a motion. I'll make the motion.
He just
I made the motion.
Oh, you made the
and
motion
Alex
second.
seconded.
I'm sorry. God dang. I promise I'm here.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, let's vote on the consent agenda approval. All in favor say yes.
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 All opposed say no. Unanimous with those three moved out of the consent agenda. Recognitions, USD 49 Achievement of Excellence Recognition, CAN-STAR recognitions.
Yeah,
Ron
I'm
or
gonna
Shanna?
I'm gonna let Shanna take this.
Okay. Everyone just,
Can you tell me who seconded the approval
Alan.
of consent? Okay.
yeah, and then I can connect. Let's do that. Okay. So we wanted to share, Ron received a letter from Commissioner Watson probably a week and a half ago, and then Dr. Watson shared with the state board at their meeting here in October that Kansas STAR recognitions were sent to systems. So I will come back to you typically November, early December with like the real data, with the accountability report, all of that. But for now, I wanted you to know so that we could share it with all of our staff what we were recognized for. So again, Kansas STAR recognition, these are the different categories that you can earn based on different criteria in which systems across the state of Kansas are evaluated or measured. As a district, we've taken the approach in that, especially the qualitative measures that are more process-based, we use rubrics to identify where we are as a district. And if we're doing great work, we should be recognized for that great work. So that's where we've applied. It's also a great tool to see where we are and set some goals as to how we can move up. So it's as much of a needs assessment and a way to reflect on where we are in those measures, as well as if we can earn a STAR recognition. So these are those qualitative measures: social emotional growth, the kindergarten readiness, individual plans of study, civic engagement. Last year we applied for one of those, kindergarten readiness, and we won or were awarded the copper level. And then this year we went ahead and reapplied for kindergarten readiness. We had thought we added some things and were adding the artifacts and evidence and submitting it, hoping we would move up. And then we also felt like with all of our work with MTSS and BESL that we could apply for the social emotional growth rubric too. So for kindergarten readiness, we did move up from a copper to a bronze. So we were excited about that. And then for our social emotional growth, we earned a silver right out of the gate with our application. So very proud of all the work that our staff has done district-wide and our building leadership teams. We have some strong things in place with our social emotional, the way we are measuring some different indicators and working with some tier 1 curriculum and that type of thing. So that's where we are with the qualitative measures. These are some of the quantitative ones that, based on student performance, we can be recognized for. So this is the academically prepared for post-secondary, which is how our kids would do on state assessments. So based on where we are, and again, we don't have those official results in our accountability report, but we are again at the copper level. We're above the state average, but not quite to the bronze level yet. And then for the post-secondary effectiveness, that's our students who graduate. We really talk about, the state talks about having 2 pieces of paper, not just the high school diploma, but either some type of certification, training that's needed beyond high school. The goal is that 75% of graduates earn some type of post-secondary. Some of them go on to earn a bachelor's or master's degree. So we as a district are at the silver level, which moving up in that category as well. So we were excited to learn of that. And then because that is higher than they would predict, they look at factors different systems have. You could also qualify for some Commissioner's Award, and we again will be honored with the Commissioner's Award with honors. So wanted to share that with you all, kind of a preliminary, and give a shout out, and we'll share with the district so that they know and can applaud the efforts that they put in to make all these things happen for our students. So just wanted to share that quickly with you. And again, I'll come back when we have the accountability report and we'll share a little bit more of the data.
I'm glad to hear those, and you're going to get those out to our staff and our buildings and
Mm-hmm.
our teachers soon here. That ought to be a little positive to start the second 9 weeks
That's
right
right.
here on that. So, thank you, Shanna.
You bet.
Okay, Jess, before we move on, do we need to refresh our computers?
Yeah.
Okay, moving down to 4.1, public comment. Public forum guidelines, the board requests that all members of the public respect the rules outlined below so that everyone that wants an opportunity to provide input to the board will be given that chance. Speakers are asked to start with stating their name and address where they reside. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes to make their presentations. Speakers are asked to make only points that have not been made previously. Except to clarify questions, board members shall not interact with the speakers at the open forum. The board asks that all members of the public respect these rules so that everyone that wants an opportunity to provide input that has not already been given will have a chance during our public forum. Do I have anybody that wants to address the board tonight? I see one hand. If you would want to please come up and identify yourself and your address.
Okay, my name is Ruth Leglider. I live at 1321 Western Plains, that's east of Canterbury. The people that got an automatic 25% increase in their tax evaluations due to their geography. I'd like to talk about the rebranding of Hayes High School and Middle School, and I'll try and talk as fast as I can because this is worth more than 3 minutes. First time I heard of the rebranding was from a Wichita station, which was disappointing. The station stated the mascot for Hayes High could change the name of the school, first time in their history. With the new school, the Hayes School District is looking to rebrand. To me, that looked like a fact and a goal. So that kind of got my attention. And according to high school's administration, they're going to send surveys to the kids to best name change for some ideas for a name change, for a possible name change. And I think that's kind of jumping the gun. My first instinct was to call the principal. I spoke with the head principal. He was very gracious and listened to my concerns, but he didn't have any answers. He referred me to the super. I sent an email that was transferred to Chrissy, and she did respond promptly, which I appreciated, but it was more of a copy and a paste and no questions were answered. So that gives me more reason for my main point. We need a community meeting, kind of like the ones that were held to inform the people, the community, about having a school bond. And a lot of questions out there. What's the cost? That's the big one. Nobody's got an extra dime today. And deadline for the name change. Who decides? I also read, observation from survey will be submitted and utilized by a branding committee formed by 489 staff, parents, Hayes High alumni. I'd like to know how many and names, all the board members as it should, community members, names how many, and names of the staff, how many of the staff, all of the staff, I don't know. And also as surveys, it goes to parents. I know a lady who's lived here 2 months, and she got a survey. I've lived here all my life, I'm an alumni. I had to ask for one, and I bet our answers aren't the same. I just feel that we need some more community involvement. You're wanting community support. The only way to get that is through transparency and being honest and answering all these questions. Right now, how I feel about it is totally emotional because I have no facts on anything else. Does this need to be done? Should it be done? Why are we doing this? Why shouldn't we do it? So if my questions are answered, I could possibly be swayed, but if I am not giving that information, I only have my emotions to form my opinion. And I think that's how most people feel. I've talked to a lot of alumni, and they're not happy about this. I would be more than happy to get a petition to have people sign. And the only thing I would put, do you feel we should have a community meeting on this very, very, very important issue. That's
Okay.
it.
We appreciate you bringing this, and the 3 minutes is up, but I appreciate you bringing this. And probably the only clarification is I know the district's putting out a lot of information and answering questions, and I don't want to put down any news media that is hours away from us, but there was some probably incorrect information. You got to watch where you get your information.
Oh, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to address the board tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to 5.1 Superintendent's Report. Ron?
Yeah, you bet. Just wanted to start with some updates on bond information, some timeline schedules that are upcoming here. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff happening, but we got some stuff that's coming fast here, really starting November. Some dates I wanted to highlight for the board is we have established that local contractor summit, which will be on November 14th. Will be prior to our next actual board meeting. We'll have it here in the boardroom, and that'll be for any local contractors who want to hear about the scope of the project, timelines, and the bidding process. So that'll happen in a couple weeks.
That was put on social media today, right?
Yeah, we put it out today, social media, yeah.
And that happens November 3rd?
No.
November 14th,
14th.
yeah. Another date I'd just like to highlight is that November 14th date. That is our next board meeting, and at that time, our goal is to have a schematic design for you to review on the new Hayes High, as well as Roosevelt Elementary. DLR will be here that evening along with Nabholz, and we'll have lots of information to share with the board, as we have been doing tons of work on meeting and trying to figure out exactly the layout and what kinds of things will be, moving forward. What happens after the board reviews that schematic design is we then move into design development, and that is what everyone is eager for. That is the nuts and bolts. When we start talking individually to teachers about their individual classrooms and what they'll look like and how they'll be set up and things of that nature. So that'll be coming soon. So just wanted to talk a little bit with the board about some of those deadlines and answer any questions. I don't know if there's anyone has any questions. The next one that I want to share is, if you ask, we deliver. We will be having a community meeting to discuss the rebranding. And that meeting will occur on November 15th at 6 p.m. here in the 12th Street Auditorium. Once our musical is done, we'll have the ability to utilize our auditorium. We'll ask community to come in and give feedback and just talk about the rebranding and give the facts, and I think that's important. And we'll give everyone an opportunity. And yes, after the community meeting, we will have that branding committee formed that will take all the feedback from our community as well as the survey, and we will meet together. Right now I have 4 board members: Ken, Alan, Kurt, and Megan. Of course, we can add anyone else, just for the purpose to understand that we would notice that as a meeting where there will be 4 or more board members there. We'll notice it, that no action will be taken, but we'll do it follow that protocol there. So that will be part of it. And also, I think if you plan to if you'd let us know that you are planning to attend the community meeting, I think it's important that we'll notice that we'll have more than 4 board members. Not necessarily that you'll be taking any action or be running the meeting, but everyone will be there, because it will be official. It might be some official school business at some point. We'll see. So anyway, just let us know. Also wanted to highlight our middle school activities. Always giving them some shout out. We don't always necessarily bring our middle school kids in to be recognized, but Our 7th grade football team were undefeated league champs, 7-0. 8th graders didn't have as great a year, but it's a good group of boys that I heard. Volleyball team had some excellent seasons. A team went 23-6, finished second in their league. The B team was 18-3. The 7th grade was 27-2, and they were league champions, had a 27-game win streak, and our B team was 13-7. And also the cross-country kids, I think, did really well. We had a lot of participation, lots of numbers. We did have one individual champion, 8th grade girl, Michaela Llewellyn, was the individual champion, so wanted to recognize her. So lots of good things going on.
And just a couple things that maybe if I can piggyback on to
Yeah.
your good things going on.
Yeah.
Walking by the 12th Street Auditorium, there's a big group of students in there tonight running through the Hayes High musical practice. I believe that is during the Dead Week in November 14th, 15th area in there.
10, 11, 12.
10, okay, thank you.
Sorry. 11, 12.
And I know from looking at the information, this ought to be a good musical to also get our elementaries involved that come in and watch the musical and say, hey, I want to do that when I get into Hayes High School and everything. So I encourage all the musicals from the sound stage to the star of there. There's a lot of students involved with the program. Also, I've got several elementary principals here and high school principals. We've got parent-teacher conferences coming up. What, this week? Next? Right now. That's what I thought.
Came straight from there.
So we have parent-teacher conferences going. So we have a lot of parents in the building, grandparents in the building, a lot of kids sweating it right now. So with the parent-teacher conferences going on. So a lot of things happening in the district right now.
Can I interject one
Sure,
cool thing
sure.
too? The marching band at the Western Activities Conference last week got 1 overall for the 2nd year in a row. It was awesome. It was really cold and it was still awesome. And then today they played at the High Plains Marching Festival, and I don't know how they did, Mr. Henderson.
I should have scored. They played really, really well.
They did play really, really well. I did notice that. So that was really fun to watch. And by the way, the musical is called Seussical, the
Yes.
musical.
Susie Colvin musical.
And tickets are on sale now.
Nice plug, good job.
Mr. Henderson, so I'm assuming with that musical that we have all our elementary schools attending?
It is four matinees
That's awesome.
and 4 shows.
That's great when they can participate and see the brothers and sisters in that. So I appreciate that type of a musical. So thank you. Also, positive, this weekend is the foundation auction. And so get your tickets and please go online and be part of that because that's an important part of our district and a great money fundraiser event. And I have a question, Mr. Wilson. Napolts, are they, I know that we've talked to them about using as much as possible local people, but I've noticed that all this, we have 2 good surveyors here in town that work for Fort Hays, the city, but I noticed that all of the surveyors that we hired were from out of town, Wichita and Overland Park, I believe. So we have good people here, and I know that it have to be cheaper for them to drive from here in Hayes to out to Hayes High than coming from out of town. So I just wish you would maybe pass that on. That we really want to see people see that, and people want to see local people out there as much as possible.
I think the whole board has made it very clear through the bond issue that we're going to use. We have the summit coming up, and we're getting into dangerous territory when we assume that it's cheaper or better. That's why we hire people to come in and make those decisions.
I don't know if you're correcting me or not, but I'm just noting those 2
I
people
was
were out of
making
town.
you aware that you're in
I'm
dangerous
aware, and I've talked to
territory.
people, and I've talked to vendors, so I understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's all that I have.
Okay, board members, anything else? Okay, moving on with the amended agenda, 6.1.
No.
Okay, 5, okay,
5.2.
excuse me. Kyle? No, we do not want to miss you. 5.2.
I don't know Mike, somebody come over here, but appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to present to you guys tonight. Before we get to the main thing I wanted to talk about, personnel transactions got moved, but I want to recognize Gail Pratt Hollern. She has been an amazing teacher for the district and for the co-op for 35 years total. I think it spans actually about 42 years because she was had retired once and she's retiring again with us. She was excellent teacher. In the last few years, she's been serving as a test administrator for special education, helping with special ed evaluations and helping with teacher development, those kinds of things. And excellent, top-notch person, always learning. Just want to make sure we recognize her a little bit today.
And I appreciate everything you said about Gail and just knowing her from the district. And I really appreciate, since she knew she was on to retire, and the shortage of staff on hiring and filling those critical positions, now we can start moving on it.
Exactly. Very good. So the packet I've included in your handouts and is available online. It's a typical handout that I give out to all 4 districts that are a member of the co-op. First page is just staff and services that we provide. Just some of the details there. As far as programming focuses for this year, one of our main priorities has been Westside. We've taken, since the change with High Plains that happened over the summer, Westside has become a pretty critical thing for us to pay attention to make sure we're getting it right. Lindy McDaniel has done a great job of leading the team over there, learning every day of how best we can support students. That'll continue to be a focus throughout the whole school year, of course, but of course that makes the top. Other programming focuses, every year I try to do 1 to 2 what I call program evaluations. So basically take one department or one part of the cooperative and really do a deep dive into how do we do things, what are best practices in that area, and then what's our action plan for getting from where we are to where we want to be. Those program reviews include our special ed staff, general education staff, parents, as well as some outside experts to help provide input. One of the ones we did most recently was about our West Side and our day school, and a lot of the activities that we're doing there right now are because of things we learned through that program review. This year, we're going to be taking a look at early childhood special education across the cooperative. How do we get more and better options for more students, just in general. And then we're also going to be looking at behavioral supports across the co-op of how do we integrate those behavior supports into to support students as quickly as we can and in the most effective ways. And then another program focus, as always with special education, is trying to increase inclusion. How do we get kids grade level instruction in their general education classroom? We've had some real success in growing the use of things like Read and Write, which is an accessibility tool that's available on all iPads and laptops, student iPad and laptops, in all 4 member districts. So it's on every general education as well as every special education student's device, so we can increase that accessibility there. We're doing more with Universal Design for Learning. Andrea Wickers has been instrumental in leading that charge and helping us utilize UDL in more meaningful ways, and then focusing on increasing our co-teaching options. Hayes High and Hayes Middle School have already been using co-teaching pretty regularly. We've had some additional things being done over at Holy Family, and now it's just a matter of trying to find other ways that we can increase that across all of our member districts and member buildings. And then the last programming focus is Russell. Just wanted to give you guys an update on that. Of course, everything's still kind of in the same place as when we approved everything in spring of last year. Right now, working on updating the cooperative agreement. Hope to have first drafts to superintendents by around December, January timeframe, so we can start working out if there's any adjustments that need to be made. The intent is to bring that new cooperative agreement to you guys by around March to get approved. That way we can get it approved by the State Board of Education by May. And then we'd still have 1 more year before Russell were to join us officially, but that year would be used as kind of orientation for both students, staff, and family to make sure we get everything right for when they become a member of our co-op. So again, just an update for where we are there. Next page has district assessments. You guys have already seen this. I already include this because when I go to the member districts, their boards haven't necessarily always seen how much they're paying into the co-op, and so I include that there. And then the page after that is the Horizon Outlook for budget. So what I do is I take about a 4-year scope. So I take this year and then I estimate out what our average raise has been over the last 3 years, and I apply that and just do some other things to figure out what to expect going forward. Of course, numbers end up changing. The state changes something, and then it all changes everything, or we get a little bit more in federal or a little bit less in federal than we expected. But it's a way of kind of broadcasting out or forecasting out where do we need to be in the future. What you'll notice here is that we've got a pretty stable budget, but it's only stable if we have to increase local assessments over the next 2 or 3 years. And the reason for that is because from state funding is going to be going down over the next few years. To the last page here, special ed funding in the state, I don't know if you've heard, is not great. We're supposed to be at 92%. So excess cost is anything that we spend above the federal funds we receive. Anything we spend over that is for students with exceptionalities. So speech language pathology, special education teachers, gifted education, all of that is a part of that excess cost. So we're supposed to be funded at 92% of excess cost at the state by statute. There's a law that's been passed. Unfortunately, that law doesn't have a enforcement mechanism. So as long as the governor signs the budget, whatever got approved, got approved. But by law, it still says 92%. We've been at, this year, we're estimated to be at 70.8%. So that gap, so that's a 21% gap. That gap has gotten there because while costs have been going up about 5% each year for special education, and that's across all special education in the state, the amount that they've been adding to the funding has been about 1%. So if you're always adding if 5% is going up and you're only adding 1%, that gap gets big pretty quickly. Right now, also, that gap would be even bigger if it wasn't for COVID funds that the state has received that they've chosen to put into special education. Next year, that gap, or that federal fund, or the COVID funding goes away, and the $7 million increases go away as well. So the gap expected for next school year takes us to 64% of excess cost. So another 9% shorter, another 6%, 7% short from where we from where we are even this year. And of course, costs are continuing to go up notoriously right now. For us, in order for the state to get to 92%, it would be about $155 million this year. For us as a co-op, that represents $1.5 million. So for us, that's also 22 teaching positions. And so if the state's not providing that special education fund, the local districts have to make that up out of their own general fund. And so that $1.5 million that's not coming from the state is coming from our member districts. And so there is some hope. The State Board of Education has made a recommendation for a phase-in plan. There's been some in the Kansas legislature that thinks that doing it all at once is too risky. They don't know that they can afford it. They have a lot in their surplus, but they don't think they can afford it. So the State Board of Education has recommended a 5-year phase-in plan that would increase about $77 million per year for the next 5 years. So that would phase in to get us to that 92% by 2028. What that would mean for us as a co-op, that would be about $750,000 per increase, and a total of $11 million over the course of that 5-year phase-in, which is a very significant amount for us. So we are recommending that all policymakers related to WCKSEC to support the State Board of Education's recommendation. Of course, we'd take more than that. We could definitely use more than that. We have a lot of things that in our districts that could really be supported by having that additional funds. But it's really important as a state that we get something figured out, because otherwise it's going to be pretty drastic. Going back to that budget outlook, looking at what local would have to be in order to keep doing the things we are in special education is pretty drastic. So I stand for questions.
Kyle, I appreciate you giving the figures. I've quoted you a few times. When you say that Hayes District, we moved enough money for 22 teachers to make up the difference that the state should have been providing for special ed. So it doesn't only affect our special ed students in the co-op, it affects every kindergartner through 12th grade, because we could have had smaller classrooms, more types of studies, different things in every school in the district. So I don't apologize, because we are the advocates for our kids. We need to make sure that the state is doing what is good for kids, and they have not been.
Right. And our districts are doing a really good job of making sure that our students with special needs are getting those needs met. It's just at what cost. And
Right.
The last year that we had reached that 92% was 2010, 2011. So we have an entire educational career worth of students that have not received full funding for special ed.
I think our special ed department, if you stand outside Hayes High, the proof's in the pudding. I mean, kids are coming from all other districts to come to Hayes High because of our teachers and our programs. So, I mean, the parents in other school districts see the value too that we have here too, so.
Absolutely. Pretty proud of them. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Kyle, is Helping Hands still supported by special ed?
Helping Hands is a general education program. There are some students with disabilities that
So we don't have
participate.
special ed teachers running that program anymore?
I mean, I think there might be a special ed teacher that helps support it, but it's not a primarily special ed program that I'm aware of. It's not one that I am directly involved with.
Has that changed in the last few years? Has it always been that?
I believe with some of the CTE stuff, it kind of shifted, but I think there's a couple teachers that are involved. There's a gen ed teacher and a special ed teacher that are both involved doing some of the co-teaching that we talk about, but it's not a special ed designed program. So.
And for West Side, and since we're not working with High Plains, how has that changed?
In what way? I mean,
as far as funding?
As far as funding, I mean, every staff member in that building is now paid by us instead of some of them being paid by another entity. So
is that program costing about the same, or?
It's costing more. I can't remember the exact figures right now. Went over it in June when I got you guys' approval, but I can't remember the exact numbers. I'd hate to quote something, but it is going to cost us more, and that's reflected in this budget. So.
Okay, thank you.
So, yes.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going down to 6.0 and 6.1, the amended agenda. Alan, you asked that we move the surplus property off of the consent agenda?
Yes. We haven't had a surplus list since I can remember. So can you talk to us a little bit about it, since we haven't had much discussion about it?
Well, yeah, this is just the process that we go through. You have a list in front of you of everything that we are considering surplus and are wanting to get rid of. And so just ask the board to approve that.
Have we had any items in the last few months, or is this what we've had for quite a while?
Yeah, I think it's the stuff that's just been collected, and it's time to get rid of it. So
I had a question about the inventory system. I see that some items don't have the asset tag. What do we have now as for an inventory system?
we have an asset tag system. I don't necessarily, I don't know why some don't have an asset tag. They could possibly be so old that they've just been missed, and we're now catching
I
up.
know that's how it was when I was in the building. Some of them were just so old
Yeah.
if they didn't have an asset tag.
I bet that metal lathe is old enough not to have a tag.
Yeah, and it is. And then that lawnmower being 2003, it's probably,
Yeah.
So has that been changed? I mean, over the years, I can remember the different programs that we've used. What are we using now for our asset inventory?
Asset Tiger, correct?
Asset Tiger for the tech side on the.
Oh, is it not the same?
Not
Oh.
for everything, no, but, anything over X amount, the durable equipment is, we've changed a little bit over time. We're entering and trying to use Skyward. They have it's not really an inventory system. They have a depreciation portion of the software. And so we've been attempting to use that, but it's probably actually something that we'll be bringing to the board at some point. Maybe more of a district-wide inventory and inventory tracking system. But yeah, technology uses Asset Tiger. We've used a few different things in the time that I've been around, but we're using Skyward right now to enter the asset tag numbers and trying to hold that stuff. So anything that's recently purchased, the old stuff like this, like the lathe, if there's an asset tag, it's probably in a spreadsheet somewhere that someone houses.
I was just curious. I know that, we purchased some furniture and I don't see very many furniture items and stuff on here. Those just moved around in the district and.
A lot of that stuff, I think they, like Mr. Wilson said, I think they gather up until there's a big pile and then they'll do liquidation at that time, so.
And I'm assuming we'll have several more of these, especially with the bond, and we'll be purchasing a lot more new equipment and new things.
Yeah.
Okay? Thank you.
Any other questions on the surplus? Okay,
I have one more comment.
Okay.
I would appreciate if we could figure out a way to make this available more so than just this, make it more public so that people know that they're on this, these items are here in Hayes and that they're listed on Purple Wave. I think if we have a website, we could advertise it and put it out there so that people know, and they might click in and maybe help purchase and bring those prices up a little bit. Oh, and then the funds that come from this, where does it go?
They would just go back into as miscellaneous revenue into capital outlay.
It's district-wide, so it's not by department. It goes to for all those different departments to use if we need it.
Yeah, it'd just be a general miscellaneous revenue for capital outlay, that we would decide what accounts to put it into from there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Just to clarify, they're probably not going to be we're not going to get rich over anything on that list, so.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the list of surplus items that will be selling through Purple Wave auction site.
I second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, say no. 7-0. .2 personnel transactions. Alan?
Basically, I wanted to have the discussion about Gail Pratt Hollering, because definitely she is an outstanding asset to our district. I had the pleasure of working with her and seeing her work, and she's just an outstanding, like Kyle mentioned, and you said some things, Craig, and I just really appreciated it and wanted to have an opportunity to also bring in that on her service for our district, because 47 years is incredible, and she's an incredible person. So thank you.
Okay, any other? If not, I make a motion to approve the personnel transactions.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, vote yes.
Yes.
All opposed, vote no. 7-0. 6.3, site council minutes.
I pulled the site council and looked them over, and those are actually not site council minutes. They are home and school minutes. And I want to talk a little bit about site council because our board policy says that we need to approve a list of all the site councils. And so I don't think I've seen that. So is that something we can get, a list of all the site councils, and make sure that all the representation is covered according to the state law? And then that's 72-6439.
And I know several of the schools in past have, you said, they're not only site councils, but the schools have combined meetings, site council and parent meetings. So they don't have a separate site council. It might be their home and school meeting also.
I think the state law just requires that we have that in name, and you're right. A lot of times they can combine them or have a home and school meeting and then write them after have a site council meeting. But it's definitely that we are as a board and have the reports that according to we haven't been getting those reports from the site council.
I know
they're
usually
only
the
required
site
2 times a year.
council reports were done in June or July and came to the board.
Yeah, I mean, we do it as you get them as they complete a site council. I mean, I think we visit with administrators is that there's a minimum of 2. And so usually I ask them to try and complete one in the fall, in the first semester, and one in the second semester.
But Ron, I guess I'll ask you if you could check if the board has to approve the membership.
I think
of all
it does
site
say that in
councils.
policy. I guess if you want names, I can get names.
Let's look at that
Yeah.
and see if we need to approve them.
Yeah,
And they're meeting at least twice a year.
yeah.
And that would be nice to have because it says in here that the principal should have a established meeting schedule. And so if we had those schedules, so if we could, I mean, the site council is designed to really be a sounding board for the Board of Education. And so I don't think that's an asset that we're not taking advantage of.
I have a question of clarification, though. Are you asking for, like, when they're going to have the meetings? Because I know as a site council member, when I was eons ago, I mean, that's a group of volunteers that's not always, I mean, we were setting our meeting time, we didn't necessarily know it. So I guess I'm confused as to what you're asking for.
If we know that this school has it on the second Tuesday, that whatever their schedule is, and then I'm assuming that they'll be put on their school event calendars, that we could look to see if we have an idea on when they are. But the state law requires that there's a community person, that there's so many teachers, there's so many administrators, and when we look at this list, we don't know which, because I know some of these people, I know if they're a teacher or administrator, but I don't know for sure who's designated as their community person.
Okay.
So that would be good to know if I had a list that I could see the community person is designated as this person from each site council.
Okay.
That would, I think that would be beneficial to the board to have that information, so we know what is going on in that particular school or that department, particular department or whatever. So I agree with Alan. I've been looking for them. I noticed that Hayes Middle School does that on a regular basis. I think that's admirable of them to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, site councils were pre some of the communication devices that we have now. And I think it's difficult. I think we have a bunch of administrators. I think they would tell you that it is difficult to find site council members. It's a stretch sometimes. And sometimes even after finding them, it's tough to always get them to a meeting. So they work hard, and then we ask them to do that on top and after school. And so we'll visit with them, and we'll see if we can get that to you.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the site council minutes that are on the agenda tonight.
One second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote yes.
Yes.
All opposed, vote no. .4, updated BOE medication policy with, help me with the pronunciation.
I'm just going to say Narcan. That's easy.
Narcan administration
Naxalone, I don't
for
know.
opioid overdose policy, and this is our second reading.
Yeah, this is the exact same policy that you had last meeting. Just asking for approval tonight. Once again, Narcan is just a way to address any kind of opioid overdose that we may have to deal with. And this just gives the districts, in a sense, some coverage in terms of how we're going to administer it and take care of all the immediate needs, and just kind of outlining how this is all. I think if you've been paying attention, a lot of districts are approving this, and just since we addressed this last board meeting, we've even had Fort Hays reach out to us asking questions about some things that they're interested in maybe bringing onto their campus and having availability. We've had lots of inquiries about what we're doing, and so I think it's been good.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move that we approve the proposed updates to the Board of Education medication policy with naloxone administration for opioid overdose policy.
I second.
I have
I have a couple questions.
Okay, let's have discussion. I have a motion and a second.
Yeah, and I just have some questions. You know, when you read through, the last couple of weeks, I've been talked to a couple of medical professionals that have come up to me and asked some questions. So when I looked at the policy, I think it's all good. I've got a couple of questions about the line about training. Who's going to be doing the training? What's the training type on that?
Yeah, Jessica wasn't able, I talked to her earlier today, and her little girl was sick, so I didn't think she was going to be able to make it. But I did visit with her about that, and she will be going over the training with of course, her nursing staff as well as the teaching staff to kind of get information, just that we have this available, and it's pretty, I think she said it's fairly simple. It's she's not overly concerned about training. It's not real in depth, and feels like we can do that fairly simple. She kind of equated it to a little to the defibrillator device that we have. Of course, that is, available for anybody in the building should that ever happen to administer, and you're covered kind of under the same liability as just a good Samaritan liability coverage, that you're just trying to help someone, and as just if you remember what we talked about with Narcan, even if you administer it and they don't have an opioid, it's not going to hurt them. So I think she's not overly concerned.
Yeah. Well, and so that led to that other question. I did send Ron some questions, and so the other question I had for her, and I don't know if she got an answer on that, but about like when they administer it, they're still not breathing. Are they giving CPR automatically, or are they just?
Yeah. Anytime, and how she responded to that is if we would ever have anyone not breathing, that's the first course of action, is to go to performing CPR to get breathing immediately. And
reading the policy, I wasn't sure on that. Now that was asked, so.
That would be the first course of action.
Great.
Now, I guess my question is, and you answered my question.
Okay.
Number one, and that was, I was concerned because it was just going to be a small staff that I assumed was going to be trained. And what if those people are doing something and can't get away, or out of the building for some reason? And I really wanted the teachers, the teaching staff, to be trained as well, so that they can.
Yeah, it's nothing more than just puffing it into somebody's nose.
Right.
And so there'll be a simple little explanation and making people aware that we do have it in the building, and should that ever be something we consider as a necessary need to administer, we have that ability.
And we have staff now, like an EpiPen and allergic reaction, so there's always someone who knows how to do that. Like if the nurse leaves, then it's office staff. So this would just be one more of those things that, we want to make sure that we can react when needed, as needed.
But there's going to be somebody that's trained to use that
Yes.
in the buildings at all times?
Yeah.
Like everything.
And probably a backup person and a backup to the backup.
Right.
Like you said, just like the EpiPens and everything else.
And then you reminded me of, thank you very much for doing that. You reminded me of my second question. I was wondering This is going to be located in every school, is that right?
Yes, we'll have them in all of our schools.
Okay, that's good.
Yep.
Because I was thinking, children sometimes get a hold of their parents' opiates.
Sure, yeah.
And in school or whatever, and things like that as well.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that they're using it on purpose, but this is what's going
Yeah.
on. Where in high school, you sometimes it's on purpose, but.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted them to be carried, or be protected as well.
Yeah, they will be.
And I obviously was not able to attend last meeting, but I listened to the video, and I want to make sure I did hear it correctly, that Bill has reviewed, our legal counsel has reviewed this policy as well. Good.
Okay.
I think it's.
And I have no objection.
I should probably ask that, huh? I just made that assumption. Thank you for saying that.
I think it's an excellent put-together policy. I read this and was really careful in reading this because this was something that I think that is really important, that we are careful on this. And I think it's a well-put-together policy that will cover us in many areas. So whoever put the policy together is excellent.
That'd be Jessica Rowe.
Yep, we're lucky to have her.
Yes.
Yeah.
She did a good job.
Excellent job.
Yeah.
Okay, board, this is our second reading. Do I have a motion to approve?
You do.
Okay, then
You got a second.
discussion.
Call for vote.
I'll call for the vote. All in favor, vote yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Pass 7-0. Ron, 6.5 KASB legislative priorities.
Yeah, I just thought I'd throw this in front of you as we, each year, KSB updates our legislative priorities, and this is for their delegate assembly, the November convention. Just wanted to run through some of these priorities through the board, and for our voting delegate Allen, so the board can give him some guidance. I think just to run through there, the KSB is supporting those inflationary adjustments approved by the legislature. If you remember, Gannon lawsuit has carried us for the last 5 years. As we move forward without the Gannon predetermined based state aid amount that we've had for the last 5 years, and we've seen an increase of those last 5 years. We're supposed to see the consumer price index increase, CPI, and so they just want to make sure that school boards, support that approved increase, because just like everyone else, we see inflationary costs as well, and so our costs have gone up. Once again, just to echo what Kyle talked a little bit about, funding special ed at 92%, that has become a priority at lots of levels, at lots of different organizations, but KSB is supporting that funding at 92%. Just to echo what Kyle said, I love that the state board has put in a phase-in plan. I think that's awesome, but I would also please understand that phase-in plan is still requiring us to supplement out of our general fund, which affects, all of our teachers, all of our kids in school. And so, knowing that the state is pretty wealthy right now, as wealthy as we've ever been. So we're over the last 4 years, our state of Kansas has been doing extremely well. We have over $2 billion in cash reserves. That's $2 billion. They almost have $1 billion in what they call a rainy day fund. So if you look at $3 billion, $155 million just to pay would have been pretty easy, but they chose not to. So we need to understand the significance of that. Also, the legislature last year passed House Bill 2567, and that really has affected us. There's several different parts of that, but one of the big things that we've seen a real impact in our schools is the ability to survey our kids and get information from them. I don't know if people really understand how that impacts our students. And because we're always trying to work for our kids and understand what's going on in their lives and what's in their minds and what things we can do to help them. And so we've really been limited with House Bill 2567. So we're hoping that through some conversation, discussion, we can maybe get a little more flexibility there. Also, KSB is asking that we support Keisha's responsibility for the oversight of student interscholastic activities, not necessarily the legislature. I think there is on the election ballot, there'll be a legislative veto constitutional amendment, which is basically giving the legislature the ability, if they don't like a certain regulation, to override just by simply voting it down. In the past, if they didn't like something, they had to get a bill passed, which is a lot harder to get a bill passed than it is to just get a simple majority. And so I think KSB is supporting Keisha, and that hopefully also understanding that that legislative constitutional amendment could greatly impact lots of things. And then also the last one that I wanted to share with the board is just that revenue neutral rate hearing law it's really been added for school. It's been done for the counties and cities for several years, but I think just so board members need to understand that starting next year, we'll incur the cost for the mailing. This year, I don't believe we did, but starting next year, all those mailings, that comes out of our budget. And so we'll be spending lots of dollars to send that out. And once again, it's not necessary. It's a lot of work. I think if you talk to any county administrator, it's a tremendous amount of work that goes into that. So just KSB is asking that we hopefully can get some flexibility there as well. So those are some priorities that KSB has identified, and I just wanted to share those with the board. And if you have any discussion, by all means, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, just not much discussion. To be able to give Alan some input. He is our voting delegate for the board this year. Alan, my thoughts are I support all the KSB recommendations. They're the ones that are advocate for our kids and support our policies that we get most of our policies from with the district. And other than the legislative report, there is a vote with two candidates. And I was talking to Alan earlier. If you have a real thumbs up or I guess I shouldn't say a thumbs down on one of the two candidates, if you could give Alan some input by email before or whichever way before you vote as a delegate on the November 11th KSB. I will be going as a non-voting delegate to the convention, but Alan will be voting for our this information as well as the two people running for president. Other information from the board on any of this for Alan? Okay, thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, 6.6, superintendent's evaluation. Ron, you included some things in the agenda that is there. I was not able to be at the last meeting. I guess there was some inferences that possibly that I had at least one board member who didn't think I was doing my position, what I should be doing to speed this up, and there was an innuendo of past presidents maybe not doing their job also. What I would like to put in front of the board tonight is the superintendent, as I look through here, I know there was a discussion on goals. The superintendent's goals are very well written into our mission, our vision, our core values, and our strategic plan. because those were discussed by the board with the input from the superintendent. I do look, and I was requesting a self-evaluation from the superintendent because I think that's an important piece of it, that he bring up things, because we do that with our professional staff also with a self-evaluation. My recommendation is use the same evaluation tool that we've been using the previous 3 years, as long as anybody on this board has been on the board. It has a rating scale. It has areas for individual board members to put comments with that.
Hey, Craig, where do we find that?
I will be sending it out with that. I also propose that we, before the deadline, and give us ourselves, because I don't want to go right up to that February deadline, that we have an executive session as a preliminary discussion on the goals, the self-evaluation, all of that. A second executive session to finalize the evaluation and go through the ratings and the comments. And then the president and vice president will have a conference with the superintendent to go over the information that were finalized. So that is my recommendation. I'm opening this up to the other board
I have a question for you.
members.
So before the vice president and the president meet with the superintendent, the whole board is going to go into executive session and discuss the evaluation?
Discuss
That's what you just, that's what you
Discuss
said.
it and the finalized with all the numbers and the comments.
Okay. I have a couple of comments.
Sure.
And after I left the meeting, I started thinking, and then I started reading, and I got something from the board leadership handbook, and I went here and I went there, and then as I read through what Ron provided us on the Go board documents, I do have some questions or some concerns. If I go down to where it says evaluation procedures, the first one, the board shall schedule an executive session annually to evaluate superintendent's performance. Evidently, that's going to be addressed because you just talked about that one. If I drop down to superintendent's performance evaluation, board/superintendent develop performance goals and objectives. To me, that is totally different than what our schools district is and those. I want specific goals on how Mr. Wilson is going to make himself best to better and what he's going to do, just like I was asked to do for 31 years, just like Mr. Henderson and all of our other staff were asked to do on this, it used to be called Keep 2. And that was the system we have. It was Keep 2 is still the one that we use. And I saw the administration one in the last month. I saw where there's especially designed for counselors and all the different people. I don't understand why we are not using something like that for our superintendent, where he would state his goals, this is his outcomes, this is how he's going to approach it, and these are the timelines, instead of we get this evaluation, and I don't know what his goals are for improvement throughout the year. I do know our mission ones, but I don't know how Mr. Wilson is trying to improve himself as a superintendent, which I hope that's a goal. I mean, I do. So that's a concern I have. Then when I went through this KSAB Board Leadership Handbook, said the board will discuss between the superintendent and the whole board, and I want to make sure that that's, and you did discuss that, so I do appreciate that. And then why I was still thinking about how important this was, and so I did some real deep educational pursuits, and I just Googled responsibilities and jobs of a school board member, and the number one that keeps popping up was hiring and evaluating the superintendent of schools. So I think it needs to be our priority. I don't know if it always has. It seems like it kind of, okay, here's the deadline, we got to do something. And I would like that we have a plan a month or two after we do this in February. These are his goals. This is how we're going to accomplish this, with a pre-evaluation, a self-assessment in there somewhere early on. And then when we come to this evaluation thing that you're going to send out, I saw it last year, but we're going to be down at that bottom there, and it says what are his goals and how has he achieved them. You know, that's going to be hard for me because it doesn't say what are the school mission goals or something. It says what are his goals. And I have not been provided with superintendent improvement goals. And I don't know if you want to call it improvement. I don't know if you want to call it growth. And what I really don't want it to be is a tool where our superintendent feels threatened. I want it to be how he can improve himself, he or she, how they can improve
It's
themselves.
he, Kurt, it's he.
It might
Just
be a
clarify.
she someday, but.
Well, okay.
And how they can improve ourselves to make our schools better. And I think our system lacks some of those things. And I guess my suggestion would be, I would like to see it more in depth, I'd like to see it more scheduled, and I think it's too late in the game for this one, but I sure think that needs to be addressed so that we are on an improvement growth program. And if that takes a committee to come up with that with Mr. Wilson, so be it.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
where's your job description posted
My
or
job-
saved? Yeah.
I would guess it's probably in board policy, I'd imagine, no?
It says for board policy, I will say that I agree that we need to work from something. I abstained from that vote because I feel it's the president's job to set the agenda, and I didn't like just putting something on the agenda for him. But it does seem like we are, like, the tool that you'll send us that we've used previously, the procedure that he's outlined today, all sound very good. I've read the tool. I remember some of that stuff. And then the policy that you posted here has the evaluation, and then I go to hiring the superintendent, and it's a one-sentence description of the job in the policy. So that is kind of thin. I know many of the goals that you've crafted for yourself, but that's just through conversation. I wouldn't say that it's because of anything that's documented.
Yeah.
So I think to support you best, I think knowing kind of where, and also, I mean, we could work from his self-evaluation as well.
I'd also, Kurt's idea about creating the committee to maybe even approach this for next year, I think is a great idea. And I think that we should look at this, we'd look at it annually, but as, obviously I was the president last year, and what caught me was I was following what I thought was annual, and then we had an election, and that threw me. And so perhaps at that point, meaning if we're doing this, the first meeting in February, and doing it for that, well, then we have, in our reality last year, we had half of the people that would have had just a few weeks, less than a month, to be evaluating. So that's one of the reasons why I did it prior to, and I think we don't have to keep beating that horse. But I would like it to be the procedures looked at as, is it important? Because I believe very strongly that it was important to get the people that had seen him for the year or the half year to be able to evaluate versus the newly elected. But maybe that was the decision that why I did the actions I did. But I think if the committee then could reflect that contribution further, then maybe, again, if they so agreed, then we have our timeline look different as well.
And Tammy, I also think it would help, this is what they did this year, this is what we did this year, this is what the board does for evaluation, and this is what happens, and it's, then that, we don't cross that bridge again. We got the map laid out.
And
But I guess I want to clarify, I've
we
been
did do it that way,
evaluated.
yeah.
I mean, that's why I'm not really sure where this conversation is going, because I've been evaluated 2 times every year since I've been here.
And
I've had
2
great
times,
conversations with board members and board presidents and school boards. So I think I want to clarify that. It almost seems like you're saying that
No, I'm
I've
not-
not been
no.
evaluated.
No.
That is not the case.
No, I agree with you. But
I've had great
I would like an
evaluations.
evaluation system or a growth system that is scheduled out, that's logical, that moves down a path, not.
I don't really understand what.
But
I mean-
if you want me to evaluate you on, like I said, that I read.
Hopefully you're not going to evaluate me in
On
open
board,
session.
superintendent develop performance goals and objectives, I don't have them.
Well, I think what,
I-
I'm going to tell you,
am
I
not-
work on high student achievement every day.
I disagree with you.
I work
I
on
have
highly
not
effective
received
staff
them.
every day.
Then we need to hear what those things are, what you're doing.
Well, I
so
think
we
if
have
you
that.
did, you have heard them if you've paid
Every meeting.
attention. You had a meeting on August 5th where we threw all that information at you. And I think if you would look at it,
I
you would
understand
understand,
that,
we're doing really great things in this
but there's some.
district.
And
That's
I
not
agree.
that's not what I'm saying.
Well,
That's
but-
the way
This
school
coming
district
across.
is doing some great things. I would like this to be smooth and transitional, and we know what's going down the road.
We don't know what in-services you've attended. We don't have that information.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, that has to do with growth. That has to do with what we're doing, and that's what every other district, every other individual in this district is approved
I
to
think
go to
we need to
in-service,
remember
but our
that there is
superintendent-
you know, the role of a board member too, while we're to evaluate, is also not to micromanage. So I think that there's some, and I think that that's, you know, but I would like to point out though that, you know, certainly I think it's very important, knowing the tool, and I think, again, the fact we haven't discussed a different tool, but to change the tool every year is concerning to me, and so I did keep the same tool that I know was created by Mike Walker, and it was used before. Mike Walker used it both his years, I believe.
Yeah, I believe
And
so.
then I used it again. So I'll send that blank eval to you, Craig.
Thank you.
And then, of course, everybody here, even though the new elected didn't, huh?
The newer?
The newly elected, did not take, they did not participate because I felt it was important to get the feedback based on the performance of those that were still here. So that's one of the reasons why it happened, but everybody should have gotten the performance. I did email that to everybody before so I'll send that to you right now, Craig, before I
Mr.
forget.
President?
Yes.
A couple things. We have done it different a few times since I've been on the board, but we did have one time when we, as a full board, go over the evaluation with the superintendent. I think all of us are individuals, part of this board. I don't understand why we don't hear that, why it's done. I mean, it should be open so all of us could hear his responses, hear what he thinks, what he's planning on improving, but to hear it secondhand or not to hear it at all doesn't make sense to me. I know other districts, they do it as a board. I think it's recommended in here from the KSB is its option is to do it by the door in executive session, and I think that's something we should consider. I really appreciate this opportunity right here to discuss this, where we haven't done that so much in the past. We've had discussion open what we're going to be doing, and I appreciate
We
that.
have had discussions every year since I've been on the board.
Not to this depth,
with-
not talking about each individual.
Say the same
I
thing.
appreciate the input, board members. As we look at the procedures, I have laid out what my recommendation. I don't think this has to be a action item. We wanted to have a good, open discussion, and I think we've had a good, open discussion of where we need to be moving in the future. But this year, I've heard from listening to the video from last meeting that we don't throw something at somebody at the last moment.
I agree.
We keep moving, and I liked some of the comments from each one that talked, and we look at that as we move past February.
Mr. President, what's your timeline for the first executive session?
Uh,
At the next
I will
meeting?
be sending that out to the, I did not write the timelines I'm not going to apologize, I have been out of town.
And Craig, we want to give you our sympathies for losing your father.
I
So thank
appreciate
you
that.
for all you're
But I
doing.
will be sending out what I brought to the board as my recommendation of the procedures. Do I have?
I have one more question.
Yes.
Okay, so I know administrators, counselors, all the other staff, are our assistant superintendents, is the evaluation process, is that on Keep 2 or is that totally
Ron.
different?
Keep 2.
You're on Keep 2, you 3, okay.
Okay. Any further input on the procedures?
I just really feel that we need to look at Mr. Wilson's job performance and base our recommendations, and I'm going to say recommendations because I really feel that this is a joint effort between us and him and Mr. Wilson, and do this in a very positive way, in a way that's going to make us better people, make him better people, and a person, like a short person, make you a better person, and not make this such a rat race that nobody really knows even what's been said or what's been talked about or anything. One of the things that came to my mind is somebody said something about job description, and that may be a start. I said, look at some of the job descriptions that's been handed out to Mr. Wilson and see if there's some things that we want to include from that onto the evaluation.
And the tool was created based on that job description.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so I think we're accomplishing
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So, but I want this to be a positive thing for everybody. I don't want him to become defensive about what's being said about his work when in fact, I think we all agree that Mr. Wilson has been doing a fabulous job, and I don't think we can ever knock that down. But there may be some things that we want him to work on, and I think that's specifically the point right there.
Not only, I don't know if it's even work on, maybe gain another skill.
Exactly.
You know, like we're on this branding thing. I don't know if Mr. Wilson was a specialist or knew much about rebranding before we started. Maybe that, you know, but to develop new skill sets too.
Okay, I have had good input from all board members on this. What I would like and my big desire, we'll go through, we'll look at where we're moving next year, and we need to have the schedule put out so we have not requests to put it on the board agenda monthly. That is sending the wrong message out to the public. If we're discussing evaluations, I can imagine if I was evaluating teachers or assistant principals and I made that an issue monthly, they would be starting to say, what is wrong with that? So,
Exactly.
okay, right now, 7.0, 7.1, Ron, we have no executive session
Nope.
tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of adjournment, say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. We are adjourned.